Hello, everyone. Hello, Spirit of Black Paris newsletter readers. Welcome to the next edition. This is the June 29th, 2020 edition. I don't know about you, but just when I say June 29th or June 26th or something, I think it's June. Is it really June? It doesn't. The markers usually for the month of June, the kind of activity they usually do, just haven't been there. So I'm kind of lost as far as time goes. I don't know. How is that going for you? There are things happening, though. There are things changing. For example, in Europe, which many of us would like to be in right now, um, things like, for example, the Eiffel Tower has just reopened and the Louvre is about to open. And so their confinement is more or less over. But are things going to be the same as they were before? Of course not. Um, with the social distancing, it has changed the way these organizations are doing business. For example, let me give you an example. Versailles Palace. If you've ever been there, you know if you go at this time of the year, anytime between April and let's say the end of October, it's packed to the gills, right? The Versailles Palace usually sells 27,500 tickets a day. 2,700 tickets at 27,500 tickets a day. With the new social distancing measures, they're bringing that number down, and it's going to be 4,500 allowed a day. That's not very many people. It's going to feel like a private tour. That's a lot of fun. That's really great for the feeling that you're going to get as you're going through the museum. It's going to make it a bit more difficult for us travel planners, or for you if you're buying tickets. It means you're going to have to get them well in advance. But that's okay, we can deal with it, because some of these new measures are bringing in conditions of visits and tourism that may be more beneficial. How nice will it be to go through the Louvre, for example, or Versailles, and not have to first be able to hear yourself think, and then not have to jostle the crowds and be able to actually concentrate on the artwork. Those are the kind of things that you do when you take evening tours, but this is going to be something reality for the foreseeable future. So that's changing a little bit. What's happening also is we think about sustainable travel. We think about the effect of travel on cities when you have consistent amount of people going through it and using the facilities. Does it wear it down? How is it sustainable for the city? And even though tourism is a major resource for many cities, it's also, we have to think of other things as well. For example, what about the mental health of the local people? Do you wonder sometimes, you hear about Parisians being grumpy. Do you wonder why? But when they go down south to their holidays and they've got all the space in the world, they're just turning to the nicest people in the world. But it's just the mental stress. Think about when you're in your city. If you live in a big city and there's always lots of people around and you can't get any room anywhere, that doesn't feel great. So I'm interested to see how we're going to manage this going forward. Another thing that's kind of that's a little bit less pleasant, I suppose, is now that the EU is opening the bloc to other EU visitors, and July 1st they're going to open the bloc to international visitors, except three countries: Russia, Brazil, and the United States. Sorry, and that's kind of it's a what a feeling, because the U.S. passport was one that was like a golden passport. You could get anywhere with the U.S. passport. Even me carrying a British and a Canadian passport, I didn't have the privileges that a U.S. passport brought. But now this, my friends, this is going to be the passport of the future. The foreseeable future anyway. The COVID-19 test. There are places where you're going to have show proof that you've been tested and negative before leaving the country, before leaving your home country and going into another country. There are places where you're going to have to take a test when you get off the plane right at the airport, and if you test positive, you might have to go into quarantine, or they're going to test you again, and then they're going to test you again in a couple of days. This is the new passport. So things have really changed, but we have to go with it because we're trying to keep get this country, get the world back into better shape, and this is the opportunity to do that. Okay, let's talk about something else. We just talked a little bit about tourism. I want to talk a little bit about politics, because politics is all around us at this moment, right? and especially around Black Lives Matters, the Black Lives Matters concerns. If I take you back to France, there is a Black Lives Matter International. They are focused, and the protests that have taken place over the last weeks, they have, yes, been sparked by the George Floyd murder, but it's gone further than that. It concerns, what they're concerned about is police brutality. Just as we as here, but there in Europe, it's really, the focus is the police brutality. And that the person that embodies that, in which all of who is the forefront of this, his name was Adama Traoré. He was murdered, killed while in police custody in 2016, and that still hasn't been resolved. There hasn't been any concrete convictions there. Out of this situation, and there have been protest marches since 2016. Now, that's out of this lack of conviction has birthed activists. For example, Adama Traoré's sister, her name is Assa Traoré. She has now been called the French Angela Davis. In those 4 years, she has organized a protest march. She has done a lot of speaking engagements. This past weekend, she was honored on BET TV Awards. So she's out there, and she wasn't an activist before her brother was killed. Now, as far as activism goes in France, there are many women, many men and women, a lot of women who are out there on the forefront, holding up different parts of this, the equation today. I'd like to introduce you to two more of them. One is Rokhaya Diallo. There's a picture of her here. She is a journalist. She's a writer, and she focuses on racism, systemic racism in France. And let me tell you, it's a hard slog for her. I've watched her many, many times on French talk shows. And when I first went to France and I watched French talk shows, I was like, this is not a talk show. This is like, it was like a fight. And it actually shocked me the way you have the host who was, kind of leading the band, but then you have one person trying to speak and everybody else kind of jumping in, and everybody's got their points to make, and nobody's listening. Nothing is being changed. People are just shouting at each other. It was distressing. So when I watched Rokhaya Diallo on the television talk shows, I wonder at the end of it, how does she come out? Like, what does she feel like in her head? Does she feel battered and bruised? She's a strong woman. She can take it. She can give it as well as she can. She takes as good as she gets. But interesting person to watch. Another person I'd like to introduce you to, another activist. Her name is Mabul Ahorro. She is like all of these. They are French-born. They are all French-born. She's from Ivory Coast origins. She specializes in Black identity. She's a scholar. When she started her studies, she wanted to study Black studies and was told here in France, that is not even a subject. That's not even a discipline to study. So she went and studied the United States, and she specialized in African American studies and in diaspora studies. She's taught at Columbia University at Bennington, and now she is a lecturer here also at the University of Tours, which is in the south of France. Here's a picture of her, and she's an author as well. This is her latest book. It is called France and the Hexagon. The hexagon refers to the shape of mainland France. So she's talking about Black identity within mainland France. She's talking about colorblind, the myth of colorblind in France, and she's really taking them to task for it, and rightly so. So we have in this time, in this era, in the last few years, we have these activists coming forward, coming more and more. I mean, not that there wasn't activists before. We look to Christiane Taubira, who authored the law that made slavery a crime against humanity in 2001. But she also was down there marching for representation for Guyana. She was the first Minister of Justice, first French Black Minister of Justice here in France. But so those are three people I've mentioned. I'm going to put links to them down below this video. And just like around the world, in France, also there are, heads are chopped. People are myth makers, people who have been admired, who you see take up a lot of space in history books. They're also being dethroned. And I just want to mention one of them at this point. See this picture here? This is a man called JeanBaptiste Colbert. You may have walked anywhere in France on Rue Colbert. You may have dined at Colbert restaurants. He was the Minister of Finance in France in the 17th century. But most infamously, he is the author of this vile little legal document here called Le Code Noir. The Code Noir was a book that was authorized during the reign of Louis XIV. So think about that when you go to Versailles. But this book, this legal document regulates and defines the role, the life of the enslaved person within France's territories. So it defines what they can and can't do and their rights and non-rights, also for the slave owners. And it also takes, when there is any kind of disagreement, any kind of dispute, this book, the Code Noir, is the one that the rules follow. You can see this book if you ever want to see what it in real form, and it's worth going to see it. You can find it in the original, one of the originals, in the city of Nantes. Nantes is a town, a city outside of Paris, about 2 hours by train on the west coast of France. And Nantes is known, when we talk about the slave trade, it was the number one slave trading port in France. So when you go to Nantes today, you will see all kinds of vestiges, the remains of that slave trade industry. You can take tours in the district that was known right by the port, and you can see who all the players were. You can see their names, of course, on buildings. You can see also sculpted into buildings as the sculptured face of Africans. So that was a center, but also there you can see the memorial to the abolition of slavery. So that is the center of the slavery memorial in France, in Nantes. You see it on the map here where it is, but if you go down the coast just to Bordeaux, Bordeaux is the number 2 slave trading port. And Bordeaux, up to this point, when you think about Bordeaux, when the tourism office or the city talks about its history, it talks about wine and that. But just in the very most recent, they're finally coming to terms, and not just coming to terms, but they're agreeing to put part of their narrative, their role in the slave trade. And there is actually one just outside of Paris, the largest Black History Month event commemoration takes place in Bordeaux and run by a man who runs an organization called Mémoire et Partage, so the sharing of memory. So these are the things that are happening in France. And so, why do I bring that up? Sometimes maybe you just want to go to France and you want to know what the beauty of it and the food and all that. But we can't consciously not recognize. And I know that you as travelers, you would travel because you want to know the culture. You want to know the people that live there. You want to feel close. You want to feel engaged in it. And part of that engagement is knowing it's both sides. When I started doing the tours, I used to tell Black history from the nice sides, just the relationship between France and Black America, all the good stuff. And then as time goes on, I became more politicized and became more aware. I started telling the more political sides. And to this day, I can't not tell the story. And I hope that's what you come to France to learn. So to me, it's like a marriage. Me and France is like a marriage. I love France. I love going there. I loved living there. I love taking people there. I think I've given a lot to France, and I think it's given me a lot as well. But like any marriage, there's the good side and the bad side. There's the warts and the flowers, right? So that's my relationship to France. And we've got to know both sides. In any country you travel to, it's good to be aware. So Let me just back out of that a little bit. Just a little announcement. For your travels coming up, whatever you've got planned, I'm putting out a book, a new book, a little ebook. It's a digitized book, and it is fun and safe trip planning and traveling this summer and fall. So when that comes out within a week, I will let you know so you can download it for free. And on a bright note, on a fun note, I'm going to leave you with this image, the creative solution that one restaurant had or cafe had to social distancing. So I look forward to speaking to you again soon, and I hope you have a great 4th of July, 1st of July for us in Canada is Canada Day. 14th of July in France is their national holiday. So I'll see you before then. And the next time you see me on this, coming to you on video, I'll be in a new location, a new city. But more of that later. So thanks for listening, and I'll talk to you again soon. A bientôt. Take care. Bye.